Okay, this is another edition of The Rest of the Story, and we're continuing about the signature programs. You know, the value is really unique because here we had a little school, we're under-resourced, but how can we find phenomenal intellectual and academic opportunities that would match some of the wealthiest schools in the country? And that's the story behind all of these. And by the way, we're still looking for another name than signature programs. That's a little bit of a hackneyed name. So in case you have an idea, let us know. Yeah. So today we're talking about great books. And very interesting history in this. I think everybody would agree, wisdom and knowledge passed down from generation to generation really comes through literature. Yeah. Poetry and literature from all different walks of life. And that informs every generation to gain the wisdom from past generations and the wealth of knowledge to lead their life in a rich way. Well, if literature is how it's passed down, then it's critical that children learn not only to read, but how to analyze literature, how to discuss literature, how to form sound opinions based on facts from good literature, just based like how to think well and read that way. And so this is where the great junior great books that we participate in comes in. So I need to give you a little background. The Junior Great Books is a part of the Great Books Foundation, which was founded by Mortimer Adler, a person that Time magazine called every man's philosopher, probably back in the 1970s, and then by Robert Hutchins. And what they did is they assembled great classical literature to be read at the college level in discussion groups where they would weed out the facts, the multiple perspectives. They would analyze them in discussion and try to draw conclusions that are based on sound facts. Well, that particular program, as I said, was formed by Mortimer Adler and Robert Hutchinson, and they began it at the University of Chicago, and then later a few I think St. John's on the East Coast. But Mortimer Adler wrote a book called How to Read a Book, and even to this day it's considered the best book ever written on how to read a book. In the 50s and 60s, it was standard reading in freshman English courses. Well, anyway, he's the one who came up with the Junior Great Books along with Robert Hutchins. Then in the 1960s, the Great Books Foundation decided you have to start younger. If you're waiting until college when children learn how to participate in book discussions and how to analyze and critique literature, you need to start earlier. So they came up with the Junior Great Books program, which was for kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. And once again, what they did is they took selections of quality literature, poetry, fairy tales, great discussions about fairy tales for children. Mm-hmm. And then they laid out the program for teachers, training program for teachers, who would then lead these shared inquiry discussions so that children can learn this, through this kind of mutual participation and analyzing text together. So I'm going to let Mrs. Debelak, who's done most of the work with Junior Great Books, give a few examples and explain more. Just what is Great Books?
So the hallmark of the Junior Great Books method is called shared inquiry. Birchwood supplies each student with an anthology of high-quality stories, nonfiction, and poetry. Students are taught how to read deeply, develop curiosity, and jot notes as they read. Their minds are actively engaged to discover the author's intended meaning. They read it once to get the big picture and jot questions. They read it a second time to examine questions posed by the teacher. This equips them to participate in shared inquiry. Discussions are lively as students debate and share interpretations which must be based upon evidence from the text. Questions posed by the leader have more than one possible interpretation. Some examples are, in 2nd grade, The Tale of Nutkin by Beatrix Potter, a question is, do you feel sorry for Nutkin, or do you think he gets what he deserves? In the 3rd grade Japanese folktale, The Magic Listening Cap, as told by Yoshika Uchida, a question is, Why does the old man decide not to wear his magic listening cap at the end of the story? In a fourth grade story, Thank You, Ma'am, by Langston Hughes, a possible interpretive question is, why can't Roger say thank you to Mrs. Jones? A sixth grade example from The Veldt by Ray Bradbury. According to the story, are George and Lydia to blame for what happens to them? In the seventh grade story, The Day of the Butterfly by Alice Munro, a question might be, why doesn't Helen want to accept Myra's gift? An eighth grade example from The Bat by Anton Chekhov. Why does the lawyer say in his letter, I despise all that you live by? And also The Destructors by Graham Greene. Why does Trevor want to completely destroy Mr. Thomas's house? Since the Dryden questions for shared inquiry have several interpretations of the author's intended meaning, students are freed from the pressure to come up with the right answer. They develop the confidence to express their thoughts. They encourage to change their opinion after listening to the viewpoints of others. Junior grade books develops critical thinking skills that will help them all their lives and which are so needed in society. In this way, our students will be the ones who can pass on wisdom and knowledge to the next generation. That's
And I would
books.
I would probably add too, so Birchwood has become a hub for training for throughout Northeast Ohio because we've been doing this for so long and have obviously benefited. So it's one of those signature programs that we're so proud of, and the children get so much out of them. And you can see, I think, just by the background and by what Mrs. D said, how valuable it is for your children to participate in the Junior Great Books program.